Hey, Katrina here from Scrappy Horses. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I have a couple of things I want to share with you. Obviously one being my project. But before I do that, I want to share some information about the Paper a la Mode Challenge over at the Outlaws. We are changing our name. We're changing our name because we're not just about paper. We're about anything and everything. And when I say anything and everything, I mean anything and everything. I'm talking this. Basically, if you make it and it's family friendly, it's more than welcome in our challenge. We want to see all the wonderful things that you make, all the things you create, whether it be in your craft room, your kitchen, your garage, your basement. We want to see it. So share it with us at the new Anything Goes in a Card-Free Zone. Now, that brings me to the second point of this. We don't want to see your cards. We love seeing cards over in all the other challenges at the Outlaws, just not at Anything Goes in a Card-Free Zone challenge blog. This month, our optional theme is books, magazines, or newspapers. So let us know how that inspires you, or go with the Anything Goes theme. Let's move on to my project. I was inspired by books. I decided to create a photo frame / journal out of an old book. So I started with obviously the book and a photo, and my photo measures 2.75 by 4 inches. I knew I wanted the actual frame to be about 3 by 3.6 by about 5.25 inches. So I needed to cut a hole in the cover of my book about that size. In order to do that, I thought it might be easiest if I just made a template in Cricut Design Space. So you can see on the far right, I have my book cover. I have the cutting template where I just took the size of the book cover and I cut the hole in where I knew I needed it. Now, if you look at this book, you'll see that on the inside, I'm showing you there that I chose this book because I loved the edges of the pages. Okay, going on. You'll see that I have this verbiage in there and it doesn't go to near the edge. So if I wanted the verbiage to show, I needed that frame cut within the size of the verbiage. Does that make sense? So I went to the first page that had a full page of text, and I figured out, where does this need to fit exactly on the page to make this work? I figured out that if I lined up the edge of my template with the edge of the book cover, I would have everything fitting on top of the text. At least I was hoping it would work that way. I did have a plan B in place just in case. After checking this about 4 million times, I actually bit the bullet and I sketched it in. I drew it in. That really wasn't too scary. It wasn't scary until I got that big X-Acto knife out and started cutting. That's when it got nerve-wracking. First, before I went to cutting, I grabbed a mat from underneath. I keep all of my mats underneath the glass plate, and so that's why you see it lifting up there. And I'm just going to stick this right under the front book cover. Now I'm going to get this big, it's like an X-Acto knife. It's not the brand X-Acto, but it's like that. And it has a sharp razor blade. And I'm going to bring that in and I'm going to start cutting on those lines. So I'm taking my metal ruler, I'm lining it up with the lines, and thinking, okay, this is where I need to cut. Now, this is where it gets a little scary. And I'm thinking, oh, what if I cut too far? What if I don't cut far enough? If I don't cut far enough, that's never a problem. But if I cut too far, that's going to be a problem. So I got some washi tape and I taped over the edges so that I could really see where the edge of those lines are. There we go. You can see. So I knew not to cut past that tape. And that's why I used the tape. This was the hardest part of doing this. I'll be honest with you. You will bear down and push that knife and you'll keep cutting and cutting and cutting. And these old books, they are made well. I mean, these covers are thick and it takes quite a bit. So, just hang in there and just run it along there very slowly, cutting a little bit at a time. Finally, that little frame piece pops out of the book. It seemed like forever. I sped things up quite a bit. Otherwise, we would have been here for hours waiting. It took a long time. All right, next I'm going to come in and I'm just going to clean up the frame a little bit, just taking off a few little edges. Now I'm going to cut away those first few pages so we get to that first full page of verbiage that I want to show through the frame. So here we go. We're going to take away these pages, slicing away carefully. And you'll see that I went ahead and I put a thin mat right underneath there just so I wouldn't cut into the book. Here comes the big reveal, and it worked. So don't have to worry about plan B. Pulled my picture of my horse Harry, which again was 2 1/4 by 4. And I'm going to set that aside and think about what I want to do, how I want to frame that out and put that under there. I thought I wanted to go with something thin like this. And then I ended up deciding, no, I want to go with something much bigger. But first, I'm going to go ahead and cut out some more frame here. So I'm going to bring in a very thin mat and I'm going to cut away another hole out of this page. I'm marking it with a pencil and I'm cutting it, I'm going scant with it because I want some of the verbiage to show around the edge and I want to keep enough open to get the full picture in as well as a few other little elements. So once I've drawn this in, then I'm going to slide in a very thin mat and I'm going to cut that out with a single edge razor blade. Obviously, you want to be very careful when you're working with these really sharp tools. All right, I'm going to check my size. It worked out fine. So now I'm going to come back in with that razor blade and I'm just going to scruff up that edge just to give it a very rustic sort of look. Next, I'm going to come in with some ink and I'm using a very, very light color and I'm just going to ink around the edges of this. And then I decided it wasn't quite dark enough. So I came in and I went over it with a little darker color. I believe it was the vintage photo from Ranger. I'm going to scruff up my picture of Harry and I'm going to place it on some black cardstock. Now, as I'm scruffing this up, I'm really scruffing it up. I'm tearing out a big portion of the photo so I could lay this piece of lace underneath and it would peek out just a little bit on the edges, but you'd see quite a bit underneath that large torn spot. I'm going to bring in some cardstock or cardboard from my cereal box. It wouldn't be one of my videos if we didn't have some cereal box in it. And I'm going to cut it to fit just the right hand edge so that it pops it up a little bit, and that gives room for my lace to stick under there. You'll see that I'm using the back of another piece of cardstock there because I didn't want to waste it and I didn't use that photo on another project. All right, so I'm going to glue that into place with a little bit of fabric tack as well as some ATG. And I'm going to put this on my black cardstock. And then I'm going to go ahead and adhere it into the book. I'm using some double score tape for that so that it really holds well, along with some fabric tack. I'm going to go ahead and stick this into the page that is right behind the opening. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue those two pages together. So you'll notice that I'm going to add a little bit of ATG here, and then I'm going to put fabric tack over the page, close the page, and then that will all be glued down. So it's actually a frame for that picture. So here we go. We're going to close it, and there it is. We've got it all framed up now. Next, we're going to take that lace and we're going to start putting that into place and start working on the cover. I've added my lace into place with fabric tack, and I have also taken a little piece of chain and added some charms, the little H and the little saddle. Now I'm going to take those and I'm going to sew the top part of that chain onto this piece of lace. So you'll see that I just ran it through the back of the lace, and now I'm going to run it through a link of the chain. And I'm just going to continue to do that. So go through the lace and then choose another link, a higher up link of the chain. And I'm just going to continue to stitch the chain into place on top of this piece of lace. Now this little piece of lace is not glued down. That way I could actually get underneath it. Once I have my little chain stitched into place on this, then I will hold the lace back into place with more fabric tack, and the stitching holds the chain then onto the lace. So you're going to see that here in just a minute. I'm going to knot the thread onto the back of the lace and trim it away. And then we will glue that into place with a little bit of fabric tack, and it's holding very nicely. It works out great. Here's a close-up of that charm, the little saddle and the little H. Now it's time to start looking at what we're going to do with that right-hand corner. I have taken a prima flower and just cut a hole in the middle of it. Then on the back, I've added a piece that I had cut for another project. It's actually fabric, and I just stuck that in the right. Now you're going to see there that little blue flower down in the lower corner. I did not end up using that, but I did use this charm, and it's called a snap charm. And it was not going to fit on the on that flower very nicely. So I took a little piece of packing styrofoam. It's really thin. I cut it into a rectangle, punched a hole with my crocodile, and then put it over that snap portion. And that worked out wonderfully. Then it would just sit right on top. I used some Gorilla Glue. Just placed it over that piece of styrofoam and over the charm, and then that held it onto the charm. You can see that little piece. You know, it just comes in packaging kind of stuff, and it's sort of flexible, so it worked out beautifully. Then I added that Gorilla Glue to the outside, and that held it onto my flower and twine. And I just stuck a little piece of, it's just few little pieces of embroidery floss under there just to give it one more little thing under there. Now I didn't use that little blue flower, but what I did do is I brought in a little piece of feather, and you're going to see that right here in this photo. I just stuck it in the edge, and I thought that really added to the Western feel and the horse feel. I also added a little bit of lace to the bottom underneath the picture that you'll see here in the very final picture of the project. Thanks so much for joining me today. I so appreciate your time and your visit. Please come on over to the Outlaws Anything Goes in a card-free zone and join us with any projects you're working on, just no cards. Optional theme, books, magazines, or newspapers, but it's optional. So anything you're working on, we want to see it. Any comments or questions on this project or about the challenge itself, leave them below and I'll be more than happy to get back with you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will catch up with you in the next video. Bye.